Hey guys, it's Ryan here from Explained, and today we're going to watch the real-life story of French high-wire walker Philippe Petit. The movie The Walk is based on his real-life story and was released in 2015. The movie covers how he dared to wire walk across the Twin Towers in 1974. Well, let's get started. Turn on the subtitles and spoilers ahead. The story begins in the year 1973 in the beautiful city of Paris. We're introduced to the main character, Philippe Petit, a street performer who wows audiences with his performance and has been doing so without any legal permit. Philippe describes himself as always in search of a place to hang his wires to display his speciality of wire walking. One day, while collecting money from his audience, one of the spectators drops a hard candy in his hat. Being a performer, Philippe takes the candy and does tricks with it. In the end, he takes the candy in his mouth and bites it to damage his teeth. To take care of the excruciating pain, Philippe goes to the dentist. While reading a magazine in the dentist's waiting room, he comes across something that catches his attention. So much so, he forgets about the pain in his teeth. He sees a photo of the unfinished World Trade Center Twin Towers, which after its construction is set to be the world's highest building. Amazed by what he has just seen, Philippe tears the page off of the magazine and takes it with him. He dreams of hanging a rope between the two towers and wire walking on it. By now, we know that Philippe is obsessed with wire walking, but to understand why that's the case, we must go to his childhood. When he was 8 years old, Philippe once snuck into a circus show in his town. There, for the first time in his life, he saw a man wire walking, and needless to say, Philippe was immediately hooked. Even after the show was over, he kept on staring at the wire, questioning how it was possible. Determined to learn to wire walk himself, Philippe ties 5 ropes between 2 trees and begins to walk on them. Day by day, as he grows older and confident in his skills, the number of wires went down, and soon he was walking on a single wire. But he still questioned if he could walk on the wires set at a great height, so he sneaks into the circus and he tries to walk the wire. But just before he could take his first step, an old man yells at him and tells him to step down. The old man's name is Papa Rudy, who happens to be the head of the circus. After stepping down from the ladder, Philippe impresses Papa Rudy with his skills, who decides to take him under his wing. Papa Rudy invites Philippe to his house, and while discussing stage presence and respect to the audience, Philippe makes the mistake of labeling himself as an artist and not a circus clown. Needless to say, he gets thrown out by Papa Rudy. Despite his parents' protest, Philippe leaves the house and everything behind to pursue his dream. That's the story of how he came to Paris. One day, while looking for a place to perform, he comes across a girl named Anne performing on the streets with her guitar. Philippe decides to showcase his talents then and there. Soon, all the spectators turn towards him, which leaves Anne with zero audience. Philippe later gets confronted by Anne and defends himself by saying he was just trying to share the audience. After their argument, it starts to rain. Philippe takes his bag, takes a restaurant umbrella, and walks with Anne. Philippe asks her out for a drink in return that he never performs anywhere near her. While having drinks together, Philippe tells Anne about his dream of wire walking on the tallest building in the world. After sharing more about each other, they fall in love, and Anne invites him to her art school to practice. Philippe starts wire walking at a much taller height. One day, a photographer named Jean-Louis sees Philippe and asks to take his photograph. Philippe lets Jean-Louis photograph him and further tells him about his dream of wire walking between the Twin Towers. Jean-Louis gets impressed by Philippe's extraordinary ambition, and Philippe tells him that he can be his official photographer. Just when Philippe is talking about his dreams, he gets hit by reality as the ropes tied to the trees get loose and Philippe falls to the ground. Jean-Louis reminds him that if this happens during his stunt in New York, he'll lose his life. To better understand rope tying, Philippe goes back to Papa Rudy. He offers to pay money in return for teaching him everything he knows about wire walking. Papa Rudy accepts his offer and he takes him in. He learns to tie ropes from Papa Rudy and also travels with him as a helper for his shows. Philippe isn't allowed to perform, but when the show gets over, he's given a chance to practice on the wire. Impressed by his dedication, Papa Rudy gives him a chance to perform at a small-town festival. Philippe begins to wire walk over a lake, but the environment around him isn't ideal. The fishermen in the lake start to heckle him, which forces him to lose his concentration. As a result, in front of Anne, Jean-Louis, Papa Rudy, and all the people in the festival, Philippe falls into the lake and fails. Embarrassed by this failure and eager to overcome it, Felipe decides to wirewalk between the towers of Notre Dame. With the help of Jean-Louis, Felipe sneaks into the cathedral and ties steel walk ropes in between the towers. He then performs this stunt in the early hours in front of many tourists and successfully completes the walk. He gets cheered on by onlookers, but what he just did was illegal, so he gets caught by the police. Felipe gets labeled a vandal by the newspapers, but in the same paper, he sees the picture of the Twin Towers. Felipe takes it as a sign and believes that it is his destiny to wirewalk between those towers. Together with Anne, he travels to New York to see the towers in person. Felipe gets scared of how tall the towers are, and he feels that it's impossible to hang a wire on that height. But then he sneaks in through the construction elevator and makes it to the unfinished observation deck. He walks over a beam to get a feel for how he can do it, and almost immediately, he feels confident he can pull it off. He returns to France and begins to lay out his plans of how exactly he'll fulfill his feat. Anne and Jean-Louis agree to be his accomplices, but there's concern on how they will install walking cables at such height to ensure the rope won't shake. For this, Felipe goes back to Papa Rudy, who instructs him on how he should install the ropes and advises him to use a safety harness. Being a wire walker himself, Papa Rudy doesn't want to see him fall to his death, but Felipe refuses the idea and says that it'll defeat the whole purpose. After a short argument between the two, Papa Rudy decides to support Felipe and gives him all his money back to fund his plan. Felipe begins practicing to accustom himself to strong winds that he'll encounter on the Twin Towers. Jean-Louis then introduces him to a person named Jeff, who wants to be an accomplice in Felipe's plan. Being a mathematician, Jeff will help him make crucial calculations. Jean-Louis then demonstrates how they'll get the ropes in the towers with the help of his archery. It seems everything is going towards Felipe's direction. He marks August 6, 1974 as the date when he'll execute his plan. He flies back to New York with his team. To learn more about the building, the people working on it, and to get the necessary measurements, Felipe visits the towers in different disguises every day. And to get the measurement of exact distance between the two towers, he disguises himself as a reporter from France and asks the questions directly to the people in charge of its construction. So far, everything has been going easy for him. But one day, while in disguise of an architect, Felipe steps on a nail that impales his feet. Even with his feet injured and him not being able to walk for a few days, Felipe doesn't let it slow down his plan. He returns to the towers the very next day in crutches, taking every bit of information he can use. Then one day, he stumbles upon a man who recognizes him as the notorious wire walker from France. The man introduces himself as Barry, and he works on the 87th floor of the North Tower. Knowing how helpful this could be, Felipe invites him to dinner and tells him everything about his plan. After knowing how serious Felipe was in achieving his dream, Barry agrees to be the inside man and help him get access to the North Tower roof. With most of the plan taken care of, Felipe and his team require a walkie-talkie through which they can communicate and not have the police pick up on their conversation. For that, a person named Jean-Pierre helps them with wired radio and also introduces him to two new accomplices, Albert and David, who will help him tie the wires. With the whole team assembled and a plan laid out, Felipe just has one day before he tries to live his dream of wire walking on the Twin Towers. The night before, he has trouble falling asleep. He gets up from his bed and starts nailing the crate with his walk cables, thinking of it as his coffin. The next day, Felipe and his team drive to the World Trade Center. With the help of Barry, Albert, and Jean-Louis getting access to the North Tower along with their equipment, Felipe kisses Anne and gets into a delivery van with the rest of his accomplices to get into the South Tower. Disguising themselves as delivery workers, they get into an elevator that takes them to the 110th floor. While unloading the walking cables, they hear the security guards approaching. David immediately flees out of fear of getting caught. Felipe and Jeff hide under a tarp which dangerously happens to be covering an elevator shaft. The two men hang on to their dear lives as they wait for the guards to leave. After hours of waiting, Felipe starts to hallucinate that Jeff has fallen to his death. He comes back to his senses and then sees that the guards have left. They immediately get out of the tarp and carry the walking cables to the top floor. He signals Jean-Louis on the other tower to shoot the arrow that will help them connect the cables to the two towers. Jean-Louis shoots the arrow, but Felipe doesn't find it. He frantically searches for the arrow and finally sees it hanging over the side of the roof. Just before the arrow falls to the ground, Felipe manages to catch it. With the help of the arrow, they first connect the wired radio and communicate with each other. Then they begin to lay the wires between the south and north towers. It's almost morning, and they still haven't finished rigging the wires. Albert on the north tower quits out of fear of getting caught. Jean-Louis informs him that Albert has also brought a camera with him and plans to sell pictures of everything that they've been doing. Even after one of his accomplices bailing out, Felipe is still hopeful that they can pull it off before sunrise. He continues the work on his side, while Jean-Louis does it from the other. Anne and Jean-Pierre watch the wires get tied from down below. Just after finished setting up the wires, a mysterious man walks up to the roof. He looks up at what Felipe had set up and gives him a nod of approval. Felipe walks back, and Jeff points to him that he was holding a steel pipe. Maybe the man approved of Felipe doing the dangerous stunt, or maybe he was just scared of him. In his narration, Felipe says that he never met that man again and calls him the mysterious visitor. With everything ready, Felipe starts to put on his costume, but a part of it falls from the tower. He gets angry for losing it just before the performance of his life and doesn't feel like doing it anymore. But after looking at the face of his accomplice, Felipe decides to do it. With the sun just starting to rise, he grabs his balancing pole and starts walking on the wire. With each step he takes ahead, he gets closer to achieving his dream. His friends watch him from below, and Anne starts to get everyone's attention to Felipe. After getting midway, Felipe gets confident and even breaks a smile. He soon gets to the North Tower and completes the stunt as the audience from below applauds him. But despite achieving what he had dreamt of, Felipe is discontent. He feels as if the other tower was calling to him, so he decides to walk back to the South Tower. Felipe once again walks on his wire, and this time he takes more confident steps than before. He's so full of confidence that he even kneels on the wire. As he's about to reach the South Tower, two police officers arrive, ready to arrest him as soon as he steps out of the wire. But Felipe decides to turn back as he walks back to the North Tower. He decides to break the most crucial role of wire walking. Felipe looks down at his audience and enjoys the moment. Soon, more police officers arrive at the end of both towers. But paying no attention to them, Felipe starts to step back and forth on the wire. The officers try to talk him into getting off the wire, but Felipe doesn't feel that it's time for him to stop his performance. He starts walking back and performs all kinds of tricks. Even a helicopter is sent to have him stop his stunt. Felipe gets back to the South Tower and finally decides to stop it. He steps off the wire and calmly surrenders to the police. The huge crowd watching him applauds his feat, and his friends breathe a sigh of relief. As he's being taken down by the police, he gets applauded by the construction workers. And even though he's being arrested, the police officers are also amazed by what he had just accomplished. The news of him wire walking the Twin Towers becomes international, which brings Papa Rudy to tears. After getting out of custody, Felipe celebrates with his friends. He thanks them for believing him and never giving up on his dream. Sadly for him, Anne decides to go back to France and follow her own dreams. For this incredible achievement, he was awarded a lifetime entry pass to the observation deck of the towers, which he visited many times in his life. And as he shows the pass to the audience, the smile fades from his face. The movie ends with a final shot of the towers. Thanks so much for watching. Tell us your thoughts on the movie down below in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and do watch some of our other videos as well. And before you leave, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps.